back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me, as usual, Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
Doing well. How are you?
It's been a week, but here we are. We are back. We are a week closer to hockey, and that's really the most important thing. We did have a couple of Flyers rookie games to talk about. We have some rookie camp, a little bit of a training camp preview. It's a little bit of a transitional show as we get towards the season here. As we do, make sure to follow us on all our social medias, sportstalkphilly.com. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso. Find us everywhere you find your podcast, including sportstalkphilly.com. So, all right, diving right into it. The rookie game.
Yep.
There were two of them.
Yes.
The first one drew a bigger crowd in-house, and I assume a bigger crowd watching online.
Sure.
Because
for
it
a very specific,
it featured the debut of Matvei Michkov in a Philadelphia Flyers uniform in game action.
Yes.
Now it's a rookie game,
of course,
but it's game action.
It is.
Obviously, we're going to dive into it. We're going to break it down a little bit here, but like just overall on the whole,
What was that?
I think he looked pretty good.
No, he did look pretty good. It cut for a second when you tried to do the when you tried to go ASMR on me.
I think he looked pretty good.
He did look pretty good. He was pretty darn close to the best player on the ice, if not the best.
Just to hit the caveats that we'll hear about if we don't hit him. Yes, of course, he should look like the best player on the ice.
Well, exactly.
It was a rookie game. It was not NHL competition for the most part. Let's be honest. But again, you still want him to look good, right? That's his first game on that North American ice surface.
Well, and I think it has to do with, it depends on what you're looking for, right? Like, no, this wasn't the Connor Bedard rookie game that was like, what did he have? 3 goals, 2 assists when he played in a rookie game?
I don't even remember, but it was
like
crazy.
Something stupid, right? Like some ridiculous kind of numbers or whatever. And these were way more competitive games. In fact, both of them went overtime.
Yep.
So like,
which I'm sure everyone loved. Especially that shootout.
Nobody loves anything more than, I almost said August because it sure feels like it sometimes, but an early September shootout.
Yeah, man. In a game that features maximum 2 to 3 players that are going to make an NHL roster.
Probably. I mean, I can't think of anybody on the Rangers side that really jumped off the page. Edstrom's good. Adam Edstrom is very good. He's got a shot. I couldn't really find any names. Like sometimes you see names like I believe last year, right? Last year, Matt Rempe was on the roster for these.
Yeah, he was. Like, he fought
right.
Wisdom, I believe.
I can't remember if it was with at one point in time.
I'm pretty sure he fought Zade Wisdom.
Yeah, it might have been.
He fought somebody.
But anyway, like yes, there are players who you can find. And Michkov, of course, is making a roster. Like it's pretty.
Yes.
There's no secrecy here. Like every other player I could possibly talk about from this game is, well, we're not going to close the door, and we want them to believe they can, but they're probably not.
And I think there's a couple of guys that we'll talk about as we move
forward. There's definitely at least there's at least one I know we're going to talk about that is getting that kind of conversation.
But there's a couple people that I'd like to see maybe not get a full 9-game tryout in the show, but at least get a game or two, and assuming they have a strong camp, of course,
Right. Well, and that's why I set my expectations on let's start with the first step of the whole process anyway. Get into at least one preseason game, maybe more, and we can talk then, Hey, you're playing somebody else. These guys aren't out, like they're out to do the same thing to you. They're trying to make an impression. This is not scrimmaging in camp with your teammates, where it's like, also don't hurt anybody. Like we're not trying to have injuries either. And the
Rangers prospects were out there to murder.
Well, here's the thing, and that was one of the parts that was most impressive about Michkov's game was that, and this is what I mean by it depends on what you were looking for, because you got the skill. The skill was there. But
the hands on the goal alone, we could
and we're gonna get to the goal and all that stuff. We're getting to it. But I thought what was impressive is that, several times he's going into dirty areas and he's not backing down from anything. And I've noted like I saw a picture of him somewhere, like probably like you see like one of these online posts.
Yeah.
And he's not wearing gear. It's not meant to be like a look, he's on the ice kind of post. It's just a casual post, right? But I'm looking at him like, well, his legs are pretty thick and his shoulders look pretty thick, and he's 19. He looks like he can handle, like, from just a strictly a size perspective, even though he's not the tallest guy.
No,
he's got some good size to him for like in what looks like muscle.
And he's in the process of filling out, like you mentioned, he's 19 years old. He's in the process of filling out physically. He's, moving countries. Obviously things are going to be a little bit different. I assume the Flyers have him on some sort of nutritional plan already.
Well, he seems like a gym rat too.
Probably to bulk and help him gain weight and provide him with enough protein to make those gym sessions effective. Yeah, he looks.
Yeah.
So one of the knocks on him was that, not that he got pushed around, but he was a little tiny bit undersized. And that playing against men, sometimes he looked a little bit physically immature. And it seems like that's coming along in giant steps.
It could be. Like, it is still rookie camp. That's one of the first caveats there.
Yeah, but 20 pounds of muscle or whatever he's added, that doesn't have anything to do with rookie camp. That boy's just big.
Well, no, I'm not talking about that. And what I'm talking about is that the Rangers roster had a lot of taller players, stronger players. Like, yes, it was built for size, no question about it. And that's a good test for him early on. But now we're going to see veteran camp and preseason games. This is going to be kind of like that experience where you see how he looks against probably, much more guys who are much more of an equivalent of what he was seeing in the KHL. Right. Like,
well, and another thing to just kind of draw parallel to is that his teammates will also be a little bit bigger, maybe be able to clear a little bit more space for him. So that does come up in kind of a commensurate level. But yeah, I think it will be a little bit more of a step towards what he's comfortable with, because he's been playing against men for, the last several years in the KHL system.
Sure. And that's the thing, right? Like, he's going to be better prepared because of that. Absolutely. The question becomes whether or not, how quickly does this become what it is, like, and like, so we might as well get to this part of the game, because like it did it feel not like it was a little destined to happen in a way? Like, every time he hopped on the ice anyway, there was a buzz. You were always looking for him. And then, next thing you know, he's out in the situation, and you get that situation, by the way, you get a situation where you want to see skill come through a little more, because it's a 5-on-3 for a long time. It's a 5-on-3 for what, a minute 58, I think is what it was, because it was a hand on the puck in the face-off violation, basically 2 seconds into a power play. So now you've got all this ice available to you, and it's going to be a power play unit with pretty much your top rookie guys out there. So it wasn't just Michkov, it was Jet Lashenko's out there, Emil Andre's out there. Who's the other one I'm forgetting at this point?
It's the guy I really want to talk about if you're talking about the D-man who was out there.
Well, Emil Andre's was out there. Is there another one I'm missing?
Okay. Oh no, I must have been thinking about the other unit. Okay.
Because I'm trying to think of who the other two would have been, because it was more on the veteran side. Massimo Rizzo was one of them, and he had a big goal later in this game as well, the Friday game. But yeah, so and honestly, as the play developed, I thought that Lashenko should have shot the puck. He's got it in the slot. He looks like he's wide open. Let her rip, kid. Like, you're in that bumper spot. You're right where you want to be. Let it go. But instead, and he's known to do this. He's a center, and he's gonna look for the pass sometimes. So he goes down low to the doorstep.
I watched Claude Giroux play on this team.
Yeah. He goes down low, and there's Michkov, and Michkov does not have a ton of space to work with there. To make that move and then outweight
on the goal line, essentially,
right, and outweight the goalie to go around him and then tuck it, and like, somehow or other, like, you couldn't really, on the video from the broadcast angle, you couldn't really see the puck because it's the opposite side, and the goalie sprawled out. Right. And the goalie's sprawling out already, but somehow or other you could like tell he's got it under control, right? Like, this isn't the goalie dove out and is on top of it and he's got to try to dig it free.
This isn't a scramble.
It's
right.
Look at the hands moving. He's still got it, and he's gonna do what I think he's gonna do, right? Like, and look, you're watching it on a stream. This isn't typical. This isn't your national game on ESPN or something like that where the cameras are great.
4K, right?
But you could see the puck over the line without, before it's fished out of there, because it's not like he buries it. It's in and out, like someone tries to keep it out. You could see it was in, and you knew
the line, baby.
And you knew whose goal it was. And you know what I love
too?
He
celebrated like it.
Oh, I know. Oh, maybe. Okay, wait a minute. Maybe you are right about the other D-man on it then, because I just remembered who else was on the power play unit, because he had the biggest grin on his face when this happened. It was Oliver Kahn.
I was gonna say, a man who I would like to see play an NHL game or two, assuming the next couple weeks go well. Just a couple. So here's the thing. My overall mentality towards draft +2 players in the CHL, they don't really need to be there for the most part. Like, not first round picks. Obviously, some of your later guys take a little bit longer to develop. But as far as I'm concerned, if you go back to junior once, that's fine. Second time, I don't necessarily know if you need to.
Probably. I hear where you're coming from.
But that's just me. And by that, I mean, I don't think there's any harm in giving him a couple of games, giving him a little bit of a taste of the NHL. Let him go on that 4-game Western Canada swing with you. You're probably going to bring an extra defenseman anyway because you're in Western Canada. You might as well let it be the kid. Drop him off in London on your way back.
I like your. I mean, I understand your thinking. That's not exactly where they're going to be.
Where is it? Not the Western Canada trip to start? I thought it was.
No. I'm saying London is not exactly Western Canada.
Well, no, but isn't the third or fourth game working its way back here?
No, not at all.
Sorry.
They're all out.
The whole NHL app updated, so I don't know where anything is. Okay. Okay, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Seattle. Yeah, then you fly home. You stop in London on the Friday.
It's a direct flight, though. You know what I mean?
I know. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. Is I think obviously you have to see how camp goes, and I'm not giving him a roster spot based on his performance. Well, he's one of the rookie games and a rookie camp.
He's one of the two we're going to talk about probably extensively when it comes to that, because they were the two that were mentioned by name by Danny Briere on Tuesday about this. So, but let's get back to the rest of this rookie game and more on Michkov and things like, because this was just the icing on the cake, by the way, that Michkov scores a goal in the game. He's playing well already. He made, from the point that the goal was scored, now we're back to 5-on-5 at this point for some of this. He made at least 2 passes I saw that were no look. Go to the right spot. I sure hope you're thinking ahead of me, because I'm thinking this and you better go. And he made just 2 really brilliant high hockey IQ plays right off the bat. And then the third period rolls around and he tries to go full Trevor Zegras on everybody and do the alley-oop pass over the top of the net. It gets knocked down, but still the
insane confidence.
Just even having that in your head to try it is crazy.
In your first game on this ice.
You haven't played. Yeah, this is your first legitimate game action in North America.
And you've been skating under John Tortorella for a week.
Well, not really, actually, because Tortorella's not running the camps yet. So we're not there yet, but we're almost there.
He was watching when Michkov tried the Michigan in rookie camp.
Well, that one happened. Yeah, you saw that then.
A couple days later. Yeah.
Because it happened, and apparently the story, because I wasn't there.
All the assistant coaches turned and started laughing at
Torts, and they're just laughing because, or it was the other way around. Torts just looked at everybody else because they know how he feels about that, and everyone's just laughing at him. So
obviously, either way, the confidence Michkov is showing early on is insane.
Well, I also loved the comments a couple comments that I saw on Twitter and things like that after he didn't score in the shootout, which was just saving it all for when it matters. Like, not trying to show off we're not trying to dive into the playbook just yet. He's not showing what he's got
saving the game film.
Right. We're keeping secrets for right now. We're not trying to expose anything first game, So he didn't do anything like super special is the point, right?
Right. Exactly.
But nonetheless,
never show your whole hand.
Right. So let's go back to the rookie game and rookie camp stuff for a minute as a whole. So maybe I'll start by highlighting some of the, here's what the goal scores were of these 2 games, other than Michkov, of course.
Yeah,
and then we can kind of go back to the conversation we had on last week's show about some of the guys toward the end. We were talking about some of the guys we were looking forward to seeing and get into what we thought. Because let's put it this way. There's a name that I didn't say that you said that I think has drawn a lot of attention as well, and I want to bring him up when it comes time.
Yes, sir. I already know who you're talking about.
Well, I might bring him up right away because it's his shot that gets deflected on the first goal.
So I don't know. If you keep dodging his name, it might get a little fishy.
It could be. Well, we'll see. Anyway, so the first goal that the Flyers scored was Alexei Gendron, who I really think is going to be a guy worth watching this year in the AHL. He kind of didn't get he tried at the AHL level last year. They ended up sending him back to juniors for a bit too, because he was eligible for that. It was kind of weird circumstances. Like he was able, because he was of age to be able to play in the AHL, but also had a year of eligibility left for junior. So now he's going full AHL at this point.
Right.
And
full season as a professional.
I like his skill and I like his speed, and I'm really curious. I mean, and this is one of those guys you take a flyer on. Like,
sure,
he was a 7th round pick. But he's a 7th round pick. You just look, if anything,
you're ringing it at the wall at that point a little bit.
You're happy if the guy's knocking on the door at the AHL level, let alone making it.
Especially with his prime development years being COVID years.
Sure.
7th round.
Well, sometimes that can contribute to it. We've talked about that with other teams before. Like Wyatt Johnston's a good example. Like that draft year, nobody had anything on anybody, and it's like, oh, that's how the guy goes 23rd or whatever.
The draft isn't going to settle down for another 3 or 4 years until kids start aging out of just COVID development phases.
Right.
Like yeah.
So anyway, but by the way, so he deflects in the shot. The shot was Spencer Gill, by the way, who he said 3rd round pick this year.
Yep.
Or
built like a brick house.
I'm sorry, 2nd. He was a 2nd round pick this year. They
built
didn't
like
have
an absolute house.
It was late 2nd. That's why I'm getting confused. It was late 2nd, but yes, he's tall. Definitely, here's the thing though. Not overly physical, like complete wrecking ball all the time. Picked his spots with the physicality.
Intelligent with it.
Really good skater. Like could move pretty well.
For his size, incredible skater, for sure.
And made a play that so Michkov had the 2nd goal. So now let's get to the 3rd goal of this first game, because he gets an uncredited assist, Spencer Gill does, for breaking up a play at the other end that looks like a sure empty net goal in the final second.
Incredible.
And they go back down the other end, and Massimo Rizzo's the one who ends up getting the goal.
It wasn't quite Patrick Stefan, but it was pretty good.
Right. It wasn't quite that. Rizzo gets the goal on a rebound. The 2 defensemen, again, it was Andre and Bonk who were kind of swapping back and forth. I think Bonk's the one who took the shot.
Okay.
In that case. But they're going, they're rotating out, trying to keep some movement going, because it's a 6-on-5. It's set up. You're trying to do kind of that overloaded power play look and keep some things moving. And yeah, so they get the game tied, and that means and right away, and I was excited about it because I'm like, you're getting 3-on-3 with Michkov right away. Like, you thought the 5-on-3 presented a lot of space to do some stuff, and he's made some plays at 5-on-5 that are like, oh wow,
he's already looked fancy, right?
Now we're going 3-on-3, but I do think there was an element that by the end of the game they double shifted him in the 3rd period.
Well, I was going to say he played most of the last 2 minutes because they're trying to come back.
Well, he wasn't on the ice when the game was tied.
No, but he had been.
He had been on the ice
the rest of that.
He had been on the ice for probably half of the 3rd period.
He
was out there constantly, and
Lappy was running him out.
Right. Well, because I think deep down they knew it was the only chance that he was going to play that weekend. Well, so
Lappy knows it's the only chance he's going to get to coach him, so he might as well just run that horse.
Fair enough.
39. 39. 39.
But either way, so they get the game tied. I think that by the time overtime rolled around, he was a little tired, and it showed a little bit. I think the burst was a little bit gone. They had chances. I think I saw by the end of the thing, they took like 7 shots in overtime.
Yeah, they were definitely.
And it wasn't just him. Like, I shouldn't say it wasn't just him and his line is what I mean by that. Like, they rolled out more than just him, and got scoring chances, got possession time, all the stuff that you want to see in 3-on-3.
Yeah.
And ultimately it goes on to the shootout. The Rangers only scored 1 goal, and that was that. That's all that was needed. Then we shift to Saturday, and Saturday was an even more low scoring game than that. It was a 3-2 game in overtime. The Flyers actually took a 2-0 lead in the game. I got to go back and look at my recap actually for the first. I know who scored the 2nd goal. The 2nd goal was Sawyer Bolton.
Okay. Who
most people are going to be out there listening be like, who? But he had a very impressionable couple of games because he was physical, and he was very much in the mix of those scrums, things like that. So he had a very eventful weekend.
Yeah, and Spencer Bolton's the kind of guy who's probably playing for like an ECHL job.
Yeah, but, could be back end of the Phantoms lineup. Could be a bottom 6 Phantom.
Sure, but
it's possible.
Does he even have an AHL deal?
That's a good question. I can look that part up for you.
I got the max. I'm willing to bet he's two-way ECHL.
I got the first goal scorer, by the way, because it was a power play goal. Matteo Mann, defenseman.
Okay, yeah,
defenseman who snuck in from the blue line
who looked pretty mobile in that game, who looked pretty decent. He stood out as one of the more mobile offensive defensemen. He's an interesting had in that game.
He's an interesting one though, because he didn't get a chance to really participate in camps last year. He got into a couple of drills and then got hurt, and basically after that was before everybody else gets on the ice, like super early in the morning, he's out there just skating around for a little bit, and then that's going to be the end of that. So that doesn't allow you to
look at him,
right? But that doesn't allow you a whole lot of time to like kind of establish what a guy can do.
It's hard to make a good impression on management. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. And so let's see. So you wanted to know about who were we talking about? Bolton, right? Bolton's got an AHL contract.
He does. Okay.
Yeah, he's an AHL contract guy.
Okay. He'll probably make the Phantoms.
Take a wild guess. He played in the NAHL and the OHL last year. Take a wild guess which team he played on.
Was it London?
Yep. So ready for this stat line though? He played for London, 40 games, 3 goals, 2 assists for 5 points and 63 penalty minutes.
Well, sure, he's probably on their third pair.
Well, he's not a defenseman. This is a forward.
Oh, well, he's probably in their bottom 6 then.
I would say so. I mean, certainly last year, certainly behind Denver Barkey, who unfortunately did not play at all during the course of this thing because he's been overcoming a bit of an illness and he had mono recently.
Right?
So yeah, so they're just he apparently lost a bunch of weight. Now he's trying to gain it back. So that was a little disappointing because I was really looking forward to
unfortunate.
Because think about all the stuff we talked about with first power play and overtime and things like that. Oh, he would have been out there for sure in those situations.
He would have gotten a ton of ice time.
Well, and I would have loved to have seen it in the second game.
Oh, okay.
Because in the second game, I got to imagine he would have like it depends on how they would have wanted to use Barkey. If they would have used him as a winger and put him on the opposite wing of Michkov with Lashenko, holy smokes, what a line that sounds like.
That's a line.
If they viewed him as a center, he probably would have been the second guy behind Lashenko, and that would have been.
And he's coming in when Michkov comes off the ice.
Right, and that would have given you another layer to it, that things like that. But either way, and then the overtime winner in that game. Fun little trio out there for you for this one because every one of them touched the puck at some point in this thing because Lashenko got it in deep, got it behind the net, helps work it out to the front of the net where Emil Andre is. He's got a lot of space. He shows some patience, waits it out, gets it over to the side of the net, and there's Samu Tuamala, who unfortunately since scoring that goal has not been able to practice. He's been day-to-day. He's been a little banged up, but he was decent for some of these games. Ian LaPerriere talked about it, and maybe this is because he was a Phantom last year, talked about it a little more like there's more to give. So like if you're looking for a guy going into camp that you thought might make some noise, kind of pump the brakes. There was a lot more to be desired from a player like that versus these guys who came in fresh out of being drafted or whatever, So, but there were your goal scorers. Let's talk about some guys that we like.
Yeah. As previously mentioned, I mentioned on last week's show that I was looking forward to watching Spencer Gill play, and I think it was a lot of fun watching him play hockey. I expect him to take a couple years in the AHL to really find his stride as a professional, but when he does, he's the kind of guy who comes up at 23, 24.
Sounds about right.
And just slides right into like your second pair.
Possibly, yeah, and
obviously it depends on what the team looks like at that point. But
he's gonna be a fun prospect. You're right.
And I know we played What If with Sam Moran for 10 years, and obviously that's a factor whenever you talk about a big guy like this, just because maintenance can be an issue. But he's not Sam Moran, and as much as the comparisons will lead to. I don't believe he has any real significant injury history.
Well, and part of the problem with even drawing that comparison right now is, Sam Moran got through a junior career and into the AHL and eventually into the NHL for a little bit. Like, I know it never lasted because of that injury history and
it's so depressing. Yeah.
And I know that. But what I'm getting at is that you have a lot like Moran's career lasted a long time to get to that point because you got to go through all the years, and every time you have one of those significant injuries, you've got to work your way back from it first before you can keep playing and basically pick up where you left off. Like you have to
and half the time he would rehab for 10 months and then re-injure it and start the whole process over.
Right, but he still was able to have a junior career, an AHL career, and have to work his way to that point. You know, maybe what you're hoping for here is that one, like you said, with less injury, if he's not as injury prone,
right? Knock on wood.
Right, you go out there and you have a situation where his development goes a little faster because he's advancing faster because he doesn't have to keep rehabbing something.
Well, he's taking more reps for actually gaining knowledge and fewer reps for getting healthy.
Sure. Right. And we'll see, right? Like it's too early to tell with somebody like that. I'll bring up
early on from what I've seen, I really liked.
Yeah. Let's stick with the blue line for a second, and I'll do this before we get to Bonk because I know you want to talk about Bonk. I had mentioned Hunter McDonald, who definitely was a standout. He
definitely turned some heads too.
And there's a main reason. McDonald and Andre both, because they were both phantoms for a time, looked like they actually had pro experience. You know, like those guys more than anything on the blue line were the guys that you look at and you're like, oh yeah, okay, they, you know. And I'm not taking away from like Helge Grans play too, and he's been a pro. Like that's not like. It's not like he's not.
Right, of course.
I just felt like I heard McDonald's name constantly. I mean, it seemed like he was noticeable, you know.
He looks like he's ready to step right into the AHL and play like top AHL minutes.
I wouldn't be shocked at that at all. That's a great point.
And depending on what happens with the NHL roster, if you're looking for a call-up who's actually going to play due to injury, like God forbid someone's out 3 or 4 weeks and you need someone to come in and actually like play 4th, 5th, 6th type of guy minutes, McDonald, as long as he looks good in that AHL time, is I think a pretty solid candidate
if he continues on the right path. Yes, and especially for how many times they've talked about him. Sure, I agree with that.
Right, and when a guy is that size and shows the skill he has shown, like, you're going to get opportunities.
Well, and I think you're onto something with how the AHL play looks, because even with all the talk about McDonald and watching him play this weekend, Emil Andre is the one who's closer to the NHL right now, based on my eyes. But once you start playing some games and seeing some things, it might be the other way around when the time comes.
Well, and I feel like Andre is a little more offensively gifted than McDonald is.
He definitely is, sure.
It's easier to show up at camp and look good offensively. I feel like it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of reps and a little bit of kind of getting your body back in that game rhythm to really tighten up your defensive game. That's why the first 3 weeks of the NHL season, we always get, 8-5 scores all game long. But things tighten up as guys get a little more comfortable, as guys, get into the rhythm of the season. And I think McDonald is a big candidate to hit a groove and just be an absolute monster for the Phantoms by
that's the other thing we can't gloss over about these rookie games is one, yes, they're rookie games, so pump the brakes on anything.
Sure.
They had one on ice day and then played a game.
Exactly. Like these guys are coming in out. If they didn't do off-season conditioning, they came in pretty out of shape.
Probably.
And I assume most of them did off-season conditioning. Don't get me wrong.
Right. And so did you want to touch on your feelings about Oliver Bonk? Because like you said, you want to see him play. You want to see him. Now, I want to see. My answer is going to be different than yours because I don't think he's ready, personally.
Okay. I don't think he's ready. I don't think he is ready to be an NHL defenseman. I don't think he's ready to make an NHL team. Okay. I want him to get a little bit of a taste. I want him to play maybe the first, like I said, that first 4-game road trip, and maybe he only gets into 2 of them. But he plays third pair minutes and second power play with Michkov. That's all I want. That's all I want.
I'm gonna not pull back, but like I don't agree.
The NHL.
Well, I don't agree with that, honestly. Because I think maybe, and see, maybe you'll agree with me on this part. I think maybe that would be an easier option, or at least more of an option, if he wasn't just basically it's juniors or NHL. Like Emil Andre got that same exact treatment last year, played a couple of games, was on the roster for I think 4, and then was down and didn't come back up for the rest of the year.
Right.
right? Like, and some of that's by merit, like that's by your style of play, because he was right there to be brought back. But my point being that you don't have a way to go back after this with this one. My goal to me anyway, they've got 7 preseason games. He got 1 last year because they really liked his camp, and I don't think that's going to
get 4 or 5 this year.
I was going to say 3 at minimum. Like, definitely at least 2. If you can play, here's what I would say. If you can play, let's say the very first one in Washington on Sunday, and then maybe play in the 2 home games on Thursday and Saturday of that week, and then you think about making a decision. I mean, let's put it this way. I'll tell you what the first part of the equation is right off the bat. Maybe he plays in both games of the back-to-back on the road. Maybe they do decide to do that. I don't know. I don't think they will, because it's really weird travel.
Why play guys back-to-back if you don't need to?
Well, no, it's not that. You sometimes want to play younger guys back-to-back. Like Michkov,
see what they got.
Like Michkov could. I don't think Michkov will, because they don't. Well, because I don't. Well, for 2 reasons. 1, they don't need to push it like that, and 2, you've got 3 preseason home games where like that's your time. Play him in like I would play him in Washington to start, because it's like, yes, the first game, get him out there.
You're talking about Michkov?
Yes, but then after that, I'm saying
home games only.
Just because it's a clear draw for your fans. Like,
oh, absolutely. The building will be full.
Right. Like on top, and not only that, but you typically tend to play your most veteran heavy lineups anyway at home. So,
well, I'll tell you this, as we move through the preseason, if 39's playing, so is Nick Delorier, period.
Probably in those games, yes. I think that's a decision you're going to have to make more in the regular season.
Right. And probably like Garnet Hathaway too.
Don't forget Rasmus Ristolainen's back too.
Yeah, but he's
but I'm just saying, big guy.
I don't expect him to jump right into the physicality after the injury and stuff. But honestly, regardless,
honestly, you're going off of sometimes bigger bodies and things like that. You can give me Scott Lawton in those games. Scott Lawton would step in and do it in a second. So like, let him be the policeman.
I am fine. I do not think it is the ideal line. Okay. And in the regular season, I don't want it to be the everyday line. But if in the preseason you give me Scott Lawton centering Michkov and Delorier, I'm good.
I don't think
just in the preseason.
Right. I don't think it's going to be that way, because they're going to want to see combinations too. Like they got to know what they're doing on October 11th. But I get your point. Yeah, so
it's going to be fun watching Michkov play with Travis Konechny. I'm telling you that much already.
Right. So my point was with Bonk was, maybe you even do try. Like I said, the travel is weird for those first 2 preseason games. One's in Washington, and they're taking a bus down after a very quick morning skate for the game group at like 10 in the morning, and then the game's at 3. So that's like a really interesting travel day to begin with. And then the next day, it's a game in Montreal at 7. And let's just say, maybe this will change because everything with the schedules are subject to change. But the schedule currently has that there is a skate in the morning first for the game group, and then they go, I guess. So I guess they're catching
a quick skate.
Well, it will be, but I'm saying I guess they're catching a flight at 11 a.m. to get to Montreal, and then being able to be at the facility maybe by 2.
Seems weird for the preseason, but you know.
What's weird for the preseason is them playing a game in Montreal. I couldn't tell you the last time that happened.
Right. Why would you purposely put cross-border travel in? Like, what are we doing?
It doesn't matter. Like this stuff stuff happens in different places all the time. It's just an interesting destination. But
I know sometimes you'll do it to take some guys, see how they are on a road trip, see how they are on the road.
But the reason why I say I wonder if they would play Bonk back to back is because there's a scheduled off day for Tuesday the 24th.
Right.
And early on in camp, when we got all the information about covering the camp and things like that, they're not doing, like, anybody we talk to is going to come up to the press room and do for the first few days, because let's face it, as a matter of fact, I just found out today, because there's a lot of construction going on over at the training center. And I just saw a post today from the training center that they are adding a 3rd rink to the facility. That's a big bulk of the construction.
Wow.
Which I'm sure one part of that is that it opens up more space for like something else to be going on while all of these happen, because they basically shut down all operations when the Flyers have stuff. Like training camp, both rinks are going to be in use at different points. So there's nothing happening all day practically, right?
Right.
They could fill 3 locker rooms with the amount of players they bring into camp. Well, I just had the document up with the
it was like 70 or 80 guys. Like,
with the
it's
training
a
camp.
lot.
Well, it's not that big. But they have 32 forwards, 20 defensemen. So now we're up over 50. And
so like
it's 52. It's 52, and 6 goaltenders is 58.
Okay,
now
it's almost 60. Okay.
Now there's not now the goaltender thing works itself out because they'll carry 2. That will work itself out. And most of these will work themselves out. I'm not saying they won't, but
you take a look at that roster and you have a pretty good idea of probably 18 or 19 of the 20 spots on the final roster.
Exactly. And you're going to do the same with forwards and things like that. Like, we're not sitting here talking about as much as it was fun to talk about some of the rookie game stuff, we're not sitting here talking about Alexei Gendron and Matteo Mann
ain't making the roster,
and Sawyer Bolton. Like, those guys are not making the team more than likely. Now,
I like Spencer Gill. He ain't making the roster this year.
No, he's going back to juniors probably. Now, Massimo Rizzo scored a goal this weekend. That's one that might be worth some conversation if he has a really good camp. If he has a really good camp, he may not. We'll see.
Was Rizzo? I forget. Was he a college guy?
Yes.
Okay, this was the guy. He is AHL or NHL. Okay.
Right.
I'm just making sure there wasn't a junior situation.
Rizzo was the guy they got from Carolina when they traded. They were supposed to get for D'Angelo, and then they had to.
And then they ended up getting for free.
Yeah, and then they had to do some other fun stuff, and then after that,
then they cap circumvented and still got this guy anyway.
Right, and it doesn't matter, but whatever. But once he finished his college career, which, by the way, he won a national championship at Denver last year.
Yep.
And then once his college career was over, apparently, a lot of people were wondering why didn't he play in the playoffs for the Phantoms last year? And Ian LaPerriere said something about he had an injury, so he didn't even get a chance to really see him skate.
Okay.
So maybe that was the whole reasoning behind it. So now, he's going to have more experience because he's coming in. He didn't come in as he's not coming in as some young guy.
Right.
He just turned 23 in June. So
it almost feels to me. Remember a couple years ago, Justin Bailey, when he was on the roster?
A little. I know what you're talking about. I get where you're coming from.
I could see him being very productive at the AHL level. I can see him, if should some spots open up at the NHL level, whether they be at the trade deadline because people got traded away or via injury or however it goes through, I could see him being a name that pops up as a call up.
Right. And within those rookie games, by the way, Elliot Desnoyers is another name. We love that name.
I love
one of the best names that they've drafted in a while.
Give me the Destroyer, top 5 nickname in Flyers, the top 10 nickname in Flyers history.
But Desnoyers he had a really good weekend, and it seemed like he's going to be another one that they might try to give a long look to. It's definitely a big year for him. I don't think last year he had the best year he could have had, and I think he battled some stuff and things like that. His numbers from last year should be on this sheet, so I can pull that up pretty quickly. What was that? 63 games, 6 goals, 22 points. It's not great. Especially as kind of a second year player. He had been down there before, so he's one to kind of have
because it's time for him to take a step forward.
Well, the reason I'm bringing it up too is because I'm looking for you're looking for guys that you think may keep getting into games later in the preseason. Like in Michkov's case, we talked about for Michkov, playing in the home preseason games may be the way to go. Now, I don't know if that's going to stick completely because they have a sizable gap between preseason games and it includes a back-to-back. So, hey, listen, I'm not putting it past him to play him in 5 out of 7. The kid's new. He's got to get some playing time. They're going to want to use him.
Right, and you want to on-ramp him to North American ice, to NHL angles, to, it's a different game. I know we talk about the KHL being a pretty decent skill level, about the same as the AHL, blah, blah, blah. Stylistically, the games are dramatically different. Well, they are played dramatically differently.
And let's be realistic about, again, if I look at that schedule, he probably plays in the first preseason game because just get him into a game as soon as possible. I would be pretty willing to bet that he would play the first home preseason game, because much like I think they would handle it just like they handled this, where it's like, listen, it's technically 2 home games in the rookie series, but he's playing the first one because everybody's been waiting to see this kid.
We're not going to hold it.
Right. If we're not going to, don't bury the lead here and say he's playing Saturday. So everybody's got to wait.
Play the kid first.
Play him.
Play him.
So I see him playing the first preseason home game, and I see him playing the last preseason home game, which is also the last game of the preseason, because that's kind of like your final roster audition.
Sure.
Like, you play pretty much who you think he's going to play.
I was going to say your final preseason game roster is usually pretty close to your opening night roster.
It maybe takes guys like who I would take out of the lineup to let another player who's battling get in. I would sit Sean Couturier in a game like that. I would maybe sit a Scott Lawton in a game like that, because I don't need to see him, or go a different direction where it's like, because I'd want the younger guy, like any of these younger guys. Maybe you sit Travis Konechny that game, because he's on the old.
Quite frankly, I know you mentioned Sean Couturier. I kind of like to see Sean Couturier play at least 3 games.
Oh, I don't mean that means. Yeah, I'm not saying that means. I'm not saying that means he doesn't play preseason games. I'm saying for that last one.
That last one. No, I understand.
That's the last hurdle to get to the regular season. I think maybe if you have battles left that you want to see, you're not forcing Couturier to play that preseason game and being like, hey, I'm going to put you out there and potentially in the line of fire with 1 preseason game to go, knowing that we're on the cusp of the regular season. I don't need to do that. I don't need to. I like I said with Konechny or Lawton, I don't feel the need to do that either. Like, if you don't know what those guys have by now, then you're not paying attention. I'd want it like, and kind of, it's like not weird, but it's in a situation like that. Like I was about to say, like, you don't even have to play certain guys like Forster or something like that. But no, I'd want to see Forster. Forster's on the younger side. He should want to play in 5 of these games.
Tyson Forster. Tyson Forster's probably in your top 6 this year.
Well, we'll kind of, let's shift gears, I guess.
I was gonna say we kind of have to.
There was. Oh, by the way, I want to touch one more prospect to touch on, and then we'll go to the rest of the veteran guys.
The more current.
Well, because Jet Lashenko is a guy who I think we need to talk about for a second, because he's talked about trying to make the team. And a lot of people got really excited after the first game with like, oh, wow. And I'll agree. Listen, I'll agree. From the entire weekend, there is a lot more there than I thought with this kid. Like, remember how we felt at the first, well, I'm trying to remember, did we do I think because we didn't do a show for a little while, so I don't think we did a show immediately after he was drafted. But even in group chat, we were kind of like, okay, like, hopefully they saw something, because like nobody seems to have this kid that high at 13, right? And it took 2 rookie games, and there's a lot of people on social media now who are ready to put him into the team lineup, right? Okay, pump the brakes a little bit, and I actually tweeted something about this because I saw part of that conversation happening, so I did tweet about it, and basically, like I even said, like exactly what I just said now. There's definitely more there than I thought, which is great. Like I really like that. But
it gives me a little bit more trust in Danny Briere, right? Because we look at this pick and go, I don't know about that. And then immediately we see more than we thought we saw.
But I think people are jumping the gun after rookie games before, and would change their minds in a second if they saw him getting dominated by veterans. Like, put this kid into and I'm going to use, because he's the first name pops in my head, but put this kid in a battle with Rasmus Ristolainen at net front.
Right. His performance gets contextualized into a rookie game pretty quickly.
Sure. And this is the exact words I tweeted. I hope he gets the Oliver Bonk Denver Barkey treatment, plays a preseason game, and goes back to juniors. And if he plays more than that, great.
Bonus.
I'm happy with that. But I don't think, I think that the right thing to do for him would be to send him down and tell him go dominate.
I agree.
Go dominate juniors. I hope we're talking about him a ton over the year as one of these junior players. And I'm not, and like I said, unfortunately now, if Barkey was one of these types of kids who wants to try to make the team, I don't think that's happening, because you lost so much time with,
that's really unfortunate.
Missing all the rookie games and stuff like that.
It's really unfortunate too, because with how thin the Flyers are at center, if he had shown up 15 pounds heavier like he expected to be and shows up and has a pretty good camp, Man, I think he slides in as a 3C, like really.
I don't know
nicely.
about that.
Maybe 4C, but he maybe takes a look at cracking your roster pretty seriously, just given your lack of depth at center.
I'll give you and this is where I'll give you Bonk has a better shot of that than Barkey does, because I think Barkey's size comes into the equation too, so that's going to be tough. But yeah, like, and actually, while I was scrolling through the tweets to find one out, I want to shout out one more person here, because we didn't really talk a ton about goaltending out of this thing, but Carson Bjarnason had a good weekend too. I want to give him props because, not a perfect game on Friday by any stretch, but a couple of situations where there's nothing you could do as a goalie, a couple of rebounds, just
stuff
tough
that's going to happen in a rookie game.
He got back into the net though and played the first period 22 hours later after starting the game, and played the first period, got peppered with 14 shots and stopped them all.
Yep.
Had a really good, that's a very good impression to make. And
and he was there. That's
and
the important part.
And you know what? He's another guy that I have to wonder, are they going to try to squeeze him into a preseason game before sending him back?
I don't think there's any real reason not to at this point, honestly. I think Fedotov is probably going to get some real time in the preseason just to get him some exposure.
Sure.
I think Urson will probably play 2 or 3 games
tops, and
maybe he's a backup for a fourth type of thing.
Actually, so I'm going to correct you on that, because you can actually be right about him playing 3 games, but I don't think it's 9 periods.
No, that's valid. Fair enough. And like in the preseason, most games are 2-1, or they split it in half, or they break it up in some capacity.
So I'll tell you what, I'll give Arison
under Arison 8 periods.
Under.
Okay.
I'm going to give him 6 to 7.
Okay.
6 is the first number that popped in my head.
I'll take the line. I'll take 8.
Well, and only because I think you want to give Fedotov a proper training session.
You want to give him some real time.
That's one. They're going to look
conditioning for him.
Well, sure. They're going to look at Cal Peterson because he's still part of the competition.
And he's making enough money that you owe it to yourself to at least take a look at him.
Sure. Then,
even though you can bury a chunk of it, like he's still $3+ million on your cap.
All right. I'm looking at the roster again. I'm going to take a shot because they got a goalie on a professional tryout. He's the only.
Here we go.
He's the only PTO of the entire camp roster, by the way. There's not another PTO. There's a couple. I think either 1 or 2. There might be 1 or 2 amateur tryouts on
PTOs.
Yeah, but there's not any other PTO. But they picked him up right in the wake of, and we'll get to the Kolosov thing in a second. But,
yep.
But Etu Makaniemi is how I'm going to go with. That's how I'm saying it, because but he's a goaltender who played. He's a Finnish goaltender. He actually played in San Jose's minor league system last year.
Okay.
Played 18 games in the AHL, 8-8 record, 3.14 goals against, 900 save percentage. Did have 3 shutouts there. So
he's a dude. He's a guy.
He's a guy. I think. Well, what he's really here for is, I wonder if the goal here is, like, let's put it this way: you've got a guy in camp as a goalie on an amateur tryout, and you've got a guy on a professional tryout,
right? And
you've got Cal Peterson, and you've got Carson Bjarnason, who's probably going back to juniors. So somewhere in that other mix of the other 2 guys, beyond Cal Peterson, someone's going to have to play in the AHL probably.
Oh yeah. So
it might be Makaniemi. And Makaniemi's not like an old guy, by the way. He's 25.
Okay.
So it's not,
and
like
that's about when you expect goalies to kind of start becoming what they are.
And he played in the AHL last year, so you want him to keep working on stuff is all there is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the San Jose Barracuda were atrocious last year, but that's okay. That's okay.
Right.
All right. Honestly, they were probably so bad that a 900 save percentage is impressive.
It could be actually, yeah. So let's.
While we are on the rookies, right? Or while we are on the goalies here.
Well, because now that there's a lot further clarification on this situation because of Danny. Well, first of all, because of Danny Briere speaking, but also because we sat there last week and even said, when a rookie camp roster is out and a training camp roster is out, you'll have your answer on where this is going.
We'll know whether he's on them or not.
Right. And Alexei Kolosov is not on the rosters.
Right. He has chosen, at this point, it is clear. Obviously, he did not report for rookie camp. It is clear that he is not planning on reporting for training camp.
Right.
So Kevin, I know we've talked about this a lot on the show. We've kind of beaten the dead horse a lot about Kolosov and whether he wants to be here or doesn't want to be here, whether he felt included or didn't feel included, or
right.
Where now that Danny Briere has finally spoken on it, we've gotten some little chirps from other members of the organization, but now that the general manager has spoken on it, where do we stand on it today?
Well, Danny Briere used the words "we have to move on," which kind of tells you, like, it doesn't mean necessarily they're moving on from him directly. It's more of a, well, we've got to prepare that this is potentially never going to happen. And Briere, when he was speaking, kind of made it, like, first of all, you can sense the frustration. I certainly could listening to it. You can sense the frustration. And I'm just looking at this kind of like, I'm kind of thinking in my head if I want to write something up on this whole situation, because I had said on the show, once it comes out like that, then I have a reason to criticize the front office or whatever. And I still do, but I feel like this is less than the Gauthier situation by a lot. But it's still going to be something. It's still something to monitor, right? Like, there's still a lesson to be learned here, which is why, like,
it may not be a red flag, but it's at minimum a yellow flag.
Well, and it's
a cause for concern.
The running title in my head for this is that there's no winners in this situation. That right now, Kolosov, as far as I know, doesn't have a place to play next year. It was either come over or you're sitting out the year. And that's the way Briere is making it sound like.
Right.
I don't know how you're going to play. This is where you have a contract.
And there has been some talk of the Flyers potentially tolling the contract like they did with the Ivan Fedotov contract.
Sure. Now I want to
read. Essentially pushing it off another year.
Right.
And they have already done that once.
Well, and Briere talked. Well, so let me read some of the quotes because this will give a lot of the context. So first of all, Briere was asked about, like, I guess he's not there, whatever, and they go, he said, I guess we can still hope that he decides to show up at some point if he wants to play hockey. We hope that he changes his mind and decides to come, but it's not looking like it at this point. It is what it is. We have to move on. So then it was brought up about kind of, as it came through, it was brought about like kind of what the plan was. And this is a really important part of the conversation because this kind of expresses where the player is coming from and why this probably happened. The way we saw it, it is probably starting the American League. Most teams around the league use their third goalie or fourth goalie. So he'd be in a competition with the guys we have to play some games this year. I think on his end, it's more about he wants to be guaranteed a spot in the NHL. If not, he prefers to stay over there, and that's not the way we see it. We agreed last year to loan him back for 1 year because he wanted to stay home. But at some point, you sign a contract. We want him here. We want him to start integrating himself to the game the way it's played here in North America, learning the language and all of that. I guess he doesn't see it that way at the moment.
So there's your first Danny listened to the last show, huh?
Pretty much.
It's basically all the stuff we said, right? It's like, listen, I understand missing your mom. I get it. I really do.
Right. Now,
you signed a contract.
Now, what did we say following that? Well, the team could do some stuff to try to make him feel as home as possible, right? Like, look, and it's got to be hard, right? Like, I'll give Kolosov this. It's got to be hard to think you're the next guy up, to think you're coming over to maybe dabble in some games at the AHL to get your feet wet potentially, and then getting the call to the NHL because they don't have anybody. Their goaltending situation has literally got
apart at the seams.
Has literally got a big gaping hole at the backup position, and you could fill that void, right? Only to find out that if not even just another guy in the system, but somebody who played in the same league as you, is going to come in and now take
flying him over and first class treating him.
And he jumps right into the NHL, which is what you wanted.
With a 2-year contract extension at 4 times the money you're making.
Sure. And then also to watch, like similarly, I get that they gave Michkov the 5-star treatment, but you're watching another kid come over who gets the president and the GM are meeting me at the airport and his family's here and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, I can understand how that looks, perception-wise.
Sure, I can understand how Kolosov feels like a little bit of a redheaded stepchild. Like, that's a thing.
Now, Ian LaPerriere talked about something because he coached the team, obviously, coached the Phantoms. And Briere kind of doubled down on this. So I'll read this part of it because this goes there too. Some of our players and coaches and development guys went above and beyond to help integrate him with the team. I feel bad for some of the leaders, Garrett Wilson and Louis Belpedio. These guys went out of their way to try to have him fit in. They would ask him to go to dinner, stuff like that. I talked to some of the guys. They all said he was fine. He was great around the rink. They liked him as a person. There didn't seem to be any issues. I believe in the leadership of those guys. Same thing with our coaches. And I didn't include this part in the article, but he went on to touch on Ian LaPerriere as the head coach. Jason Smith is there as an assistant. It's like you got two guys like that who are longtime NHL career guys who know how to be a good teammate, also was his point. And he goes, when you hear things like that, you have to take it with a grain of salt. He had some really good people to work with around him. I get it. He might be homesick, but that's the life of a professional hockey player. You've got to adapt. And if you want to play hockey, that's just how it is.
Yep.
So, and again, it's like he kind of is not hinting at, but he's on the edge of you signed a contract to be here. And now, and we honored what you wanted to do the first time around where we loaned you back.
Sure.
For the first year of it. Now we need you to come over.
Sorry, does Danny Briere know anything about going to a foreign country and not necessarily speaking the language the best?
Sure, exactly.
And I know it's a little different, right? You're in Buffalo, 20 minutes from French Canada. It's a little different, I understand. But still, I mean, he can go to the kid and be like, listen, I know, I get it. But like, you have a job.
Right. And
this job.
And this is the last quote I have from the thing. And there's more to this, obviously, than I included in the article. But so first of all, at the moment, and Briere touched on this a number of times, they're not interested in a loan at all. So they don't plan, like they're not going to loan him back. Elliot Friedman had something on 32 Thoughts about what the trade cost might be, and that it's reportedly a second-round pick, which is definitely a high cost. But at the same time, like you got, and there's a sense, and this is kind of where the point of the quote goes, because they don't want to loan him. They don't seem like they really want to trade him, obviously. Like they want, like the idea is they signed him to a contract they think he can play for them.
Right.
And Briere was asked directly, well, then are you going to toll the contract? Like if he does play somewhere over there? And he said, no, we haven't even talked about or not. No, but it's like at the moment, no, because we're not even there yet. We're not there yet. We're not going to do something like that until we get to a certain point where it's like, we might have to do this. Like we're still holding out some form of like some little hope that he might change his mind. But the trade angle of that is what's interesting, because who would want to trade for some, like the one part of it is that, and this is the biggest difference between the Cutter Gauthier one and the Alexei Kolosov one is, and I think we talked about this last week, is that Kolosov has not said, to our knowledge anyway, or to anybody's knowledge, I won't play for the Flyers. He's made it sound like I just want to be home again and I want to play in the NHL.
Right.
Well, but then again, at this stage of the season, unless you go over and earn your spot, which is not a guarantee, who's going to give you that spot? Everybody else has filled their spots.
Yeah.
Every team in the NHL right now that is starting training camp this week has 3 or 4 guys lined up that they're like, well, 2 of them are going to be our goalies. I don't know which 2. I probably know 1, but I don't have a guaranteed spot for this kid yet. And anybody who doesn't know for sure is already going to be cautious about it, because it's not their problem. It's not their problem that he won't come over and play for the team that he signed a contract for. So why would they trade for the contract? To have him tell another team, no, I don't want to come over from playing in the KHL and I want to be closer to home. Like it doesn't benefit anybody. So that begs the question. Do you wonder if he even wants to play in the NHL at all? And Briere said, yeah, we do wonder at this point, because he doesn't show he wants to come. No. That was the understanding last year. When we signed the contract, he asked us to loan him back for 1 year so he can keep developing 1 more year, and then he'd come over. We're here now, and he's still saying the same thing. That's part of the reason it's time for him to step up and respect the contract that he signed. Like, this is where you get, like, Danny Briere was not this type of player. He was not the physical type. Like he could grind, but he wasn't like a tough guy, right?
He's trying really hard to, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed.
He's just no, but you can just tell, like, there's a facial expression and a demeanor and a tone of voice he has where it's like, I don't know what else to do about this situation. I can only tell you so much.
Right. You can't fly over there, grab the kid and kidnap him. Like, at a certain point, if you don't want to come try to be a professional hockey player, then you're not going to be a professional hockey player.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you got to decide what, like, and that's why I keep going back to, if this is about not playing in the NHL, good luck finding an NHL spot that someone's going to give to you, because no one's ready to do that right now. It doesn't seem, you know, And this is a guy who's still very young. Like sometimes teams do that. Like this is one of the conversations with.
If you're 26 and you've been cooking in the minors for 4 years and you're fed up with it,
it's not even that. It's
a whole different animal.
It's Fedotov. If you're Ivan Fedotov, who had a very well-established KHL career, played internationally for your country,
right, and was also a top 5 goalie in the world in his age bracket for the last several years.
Then sometimes you get the benefit of the doubt, and somebody says you can play at the NHL right away. We're going to pluck you from the KHL and from Russia in general, and say you're going to play for us now, and we're going to give this a shot. And it's for 2 reasons. It's not like they didn't just do it with Fedotov because it's like, hey, we're grabbing a guy who was elite at the KHL level. It's you're also 28. Yep. We don't do this now. We may never know.
Right.
We got to do this now. That's the only way that there is to do it. So we better do it. Otherwise, there's no, like we're talking about a guy who's 22. Yep. You haven't had the same kind of. You don't have the same resume.
You don't have the accolades.
Right. You don't have the same resume.
You don't have the resume to show up and demand a spot.
Right. And that's why I think both sides of this conversation can be right. Do we now look at this hasn't resolved yet. Look, we could have said this about Fedotov years ago, and it's like, oh, well then, and Fedotov
for the record, he tried to come over and the military went, actually, North Pole.
Right. But you could chalk it up to organizational bad luck and immediately pin the organizational bad luck on whoever the GM is at the time. I guess that would have been Chuck, right?
When
they tried initially. But my point being,
did Ron draft him?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. That tells you how long Ivan Fedotov's been cooking.
So it goes back, but it goes back that far, and like you could do that. Like you could pin that, like not the Fedotov one, but there's no resolution yet. Like we all thought the Fedotov thing was over with, done with. We were never going to hear about this guy ever again. And then all of a sudden
he was in the Arctic Circle, maybe being poisoned.
Right. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, he's going to be here. Okay.
And by the way, he's here and starting on Thursday.
Right. Kind of. But okay, there you go. It can happen sometimes, right? Like it's not impossible. No, it's not impossible. So until there's a resolution like that, it's over with. And really, I think one of the key parts of this is resolution that involves another NHL team. Like if we hear that this kid is not playing for the Flyers specifically and goes somewhere else, and I said this last week, goes somewhere else and has a career that now looks like Sergei Bobrovsky's, let's just say, then you got a reason to have a lot of beef. But it's a little.
You do, but you don't. Like,
no, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you're gonna see right away.
Are Calgary fans mad that Adam Fox is a good player?
Well, no, I get your point, but like, okay, well, different audience. The fan base doesn't let you forget.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, I can't imagine the Calgary fan base lets them forget much.
True, but nonetheless, my point being is that this year there's going to be conversation and people who pay attention to Cutter Gautier's stat lines and Cutter Gautier's performance. Why?
Because tickets for the January 21st game will be 11th. Higher than 11th. I thought it was is it the 19th? It's sometime in mid-January.
I'll get it.
Regardless, some Saturday in mid-January, I guarantee those prices are higher than every Saturday before and after.
You know what? Just for fun, I'm going to look that up for you.
I am willing to bet that it
11th, January 11th. I have.
Okay, and I'm willing to bet it's 10% higher than the Saturday game before and the Saturday game after.
Well, now you've piqued my interest, so of course I'm going to go look and check for you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you in a minute. But
right, because Philly loves a hate watch.
But my point, but exactly my point. But
you watched the Eagles game last night. It's a hate watch.
No, that's the typical love-hate relationship we have with Philly sports. You know, yesterday everything's miserable. You know, today it could be great. You know, we'll sit down, we'll watch over the weekend, and maybe the Eagles get blown out on Sunday, but Matvei Michkov softens the blow by scoring a goal in his preseason debut against NHL players.
Wawa parking lots in the Delaware Valley were way less hospitable today than they normally are. 100%.
Sure, that's how it works. But my point being that when you have when that situation plays out and Gauthier goes to another NHL team that could directly affect 2 of your games in the season,
right?
Yeah, then you have a problem. Like then, not even just say you have a problem. It's just then Yeah, that's kind of on the front office for something getting wires crossed, and it was literally, I'm not playing for you, not
Right.
I don't want to be an NHLer. And Briere kind of tried to brush that off a little bit with like, well, they don't know what it's like from the inside. Except Kolosov did play for your team one of your teams last year.
Right, and had some hefty complaints about some things that.
Well, in his
that
own
all
head,
gets into the he said.
Could,
So we're not going to
could be warranted, could be not, but he was in. So if you think your culture across the organization is rock solid, this kid didn't seem to think so.
That's true,
and that's all you can go off of with that.
So it's one of those things where, so far, the things Danny Briere have done in terms of the scouting and the guys he's gotten, I'm pretty impressed with most of the players he's brought in from a culture perspective, right? Whether it be Jamie Drysdale or how Bunk and Barkey look, or obviously all the Michkov stuff. I'm willing to give him a little tiny sliver of benefit of the doubt when it comes to dealing with prospects that aren't his guys.
I get it.
Obviously you don't want your organization to lose, multiple high-end assets.
Multiple, let's be real, multiple top 10 guys in your system.
Right. But, when you turn one of them into a defenseman who slides into your second pair, when obviously Kolosov is still pending at the moment, but
you're right. I think the problem with what you're saying, though, is that, look, I wish that's the case too. It's tough because I'm struggling to see, not struggling to see, but it's like you're sitting here saying they shouldn't be like, oh, it's hard to pin responsibility on guys that aren't his. I would argue you inherit them. Like
you definitely do, and I'm not letting him off the hook for it. But okay, because it's not really a pattern yet. It's still just 2 incidents.
It's 2 within a year, though, and that's what people are going to point out also. And
right, but I think the public consensus, whether this ever gets confirmed or not, and I don't think it ever will be, and for the record, I have no inside knowledge here. This is pure speculation.
Sure.
Cutter Gauthier felt like, I don't want to play for John Tortorella. And again, I don't know that. I don't know if that has ever been said. I don't believe it will ever be confirmed. That is just one person speculating.
I want to go back to something that you said within that conversation also about it. Because you went to, they traded Gauthier, but they got Jamie Drysdale back and he slots into your second pairing. And my response to that would be, you hope. Because if the guy is a total bust from an injury perspective, then it's a problem. And then you didn't do enough to in that situation, right? Like,
and so this season is the first real big test of trust in the front office, because the front office says that Jamie Drysdale's healthy. And now, obviously, if he gets hurt, obviously that is a different conversation. But if he looks slow and he looks like he has something nagging and bothering him, then we lose some trust in the organization.
Sure, and you're very dangerously close to that as it is. That's why I'm saying, like, you are already there with 2 of these prospects.
I don't disagree with you, but like I said, it feels to me like one scenario is, I don't want to play for your coach, and quite frankly, I think that is a short-sighted, foolish decision that is being made by a kid.
Well, sure, if you're at
so
his age, yes.
Right. I don't agree with Cutter Gauthier's decision, but I'm trying to remember that his frontal cortex isn't fully developed. So I'm trying to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt on this one. And then the other one, a kid who also doesn't have a fully developed frontal cortex, misses his family and wants to be closer to home. So yes, I do think it is a problem with something. Like, something's obviously not perfect in the organization, because if you can smooth over a lot when you're running a high quality organization.
Right. Well, and it's a problem because if you're basing this timeline, like what we've talked about for the last several weeks, if you are basing this timeline of rebuilding on 3 years of Michkov on an entry-level deal before it's payday, potentially, and 2025 draft, look at all these picks. Well, you can't keep having prospects drop like flies that are closer to being ready, because that stunts the growth. That makes your team,
at a certain point, if internal feeling is concern about the ability to keep prospects, the ability to keep guys happy, I would point to you to start trading prospects for players. And like, I know some of that is that you're dealing from a position of weakness, like, for example, Jamie Drysdale and Cutter Gauthier. Mm-hmm. But at the other side, like, how many Flyers prospects have we talked about over the last decade? Like, they were surefire all-stars that played 8 games.
I hear you. Well, because you never know. I know, but
right. So if the organization is concerned, and again, I don't know that they are, like I said, I think these are 2 fairly isolated incidents, all things considered. The timing is a bit unfortunate. But if these are in any way connected, or the organization is at any way concerned about their ability to hold on to prospects, I think you have to at least start considering it.
Do you know what's funny? The resolution for both situations is the same thing, though.
Okay.
Draft better. And
fair enough.
And draft better in 2 different senses of the word, though. Right? Draft better in the sense of, yeah, we sat here and believed all these guys are surefire talents and things like that, and you couldn't forecast it properly, right? Or the development went awry somewhere. Draft and develop better, I guess, is that one. But also draft better in terms of kind of make sure the kid wants to play for you a little bit before you just go all in with that. Like these,
But the other method, the one I'm talking about, how many first-round picks have the Vegas Golden Knights made that actually played for their team?
I hear you. I get your point.
The answer's 1.
Right, and I get your point, but
listen, I'm not saying it's happening tomorrow. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying you push all your chips into the middle and say we're trading everybody for players. But if guys start popping up as problems, you're going to have to figure out creative solutions, because you still need to stock players.
No, and I'm going to tell you one way that it also gets fixed a little bit too is you see a lot of these teams, and I hate to keep using the same example over and over again, but there's such a good example of it, like say Dallas, that don't need to rely on those first-year guys as much in the beginning, that let them kind of get their feet wet, because why? Like, Logan Stankoven does not need to play the biggest minutes right away when he comes to the NHL, because a year earlier Wyatt Johnson was the good rookie, right? And now he's even better. So now I'm playing him because he got better. He's worth the time. I got to play him.
Slides up the line,
and everybody moves up. But that becomes a guy, like, you focus on that guy because he looks more like a superstar than just another guy. Like, the Flyers have too much trouble. The biggest trouble they have is you're trying to replace too many guys. Hey, at some point, if Tyson Forster can get to 30 goals or 35 goals, like, you keep waiting for that. Like, you need, at some point in time, those guys need to be irreplaceable so that the younger guys coming in don't have to be at everything all at once, right?
Sure.
Like, why
and that's the problem with rebuilding, right? Is that you have to get enough guys there
partially
producing that your young guys have time to properly develop.
It's partially part of the problem with rebuilding, but that's why you're highlighting Michkov the way that you are, obviously, and rightfully so.
Because I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, he can drag your lineup further up the chart than it probably deserves to be.
Well, and let's put it this way: sometimes you don't need to have, like, you can have the Michkov style talent, and it doesn't need to be anything. And this is not the same level per se, but Pittsburgh just got Rutger McGroarty, right? Now, you think he's surpassing Sidney Crosby or Evgeny Malkin in that lineup?
No,
but he's going to get a chance to play, right? And he's probably going to look better.
To play with them and look better because he's playing with them.
Sure.
And like, how much money did Sidney Crosby make Brian Rust?
Sure. Or Jake
Gensel. Much money. Or Jake Gensel or Chris Kunitz or like dozens of names over the year. And Rutger McGroarty is going to jump up that list as well, I'm sure, if he plays with them.
I get you. I hear you.
And obviously it's a little bit different from Michkov's perspective because a winger isn't quite as impactful on the game as a center can be.
Sure.
But still, I know it seems, talking to our listeners here, I know it seems like every conversation always comes back to Michkov, but that's because it does. Like, I mean, everything, right? Not even just this year, probably for the very minimum for the next 3 years while he's making under $1 million. Very likely for the entire tenure of his career as a Flyer, because I know we've mentioned it on the show before and we've made references to Eric Lindros and blah, 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 blah. Matvei Michkov is the best Philadelphia Flyer likely to be. Knock on wood. He's 20, whatever. Right. He is likely to be the best Flyer any of us have seen in 20 plus years.
Well, and I think the important thing now, and this is a good transition to training camp starting this week and all that stuff. I think that what's important here is now it's one is to see how he looks with veterans, but I'm equally as curious as to how veterans look with him.
Absolutely. And if it's going to very quickly become apparent that, like, if you can't play with Michkov, you're not going to get as many minutes. You're not going to get as much attention.
Right.
Like, quite frankly, you're less likely to remain on the roster than you would be if you could play with him.
Like, what do we have at this point? We're going to do what? 2 more shows before, like, not the next show, but the show after is when we're going to do a season preview show, I think.
Something like that. Yeah.
Because the next show we do is going to come middle of the preseason.
Our next show will be the 29th.
Yeah. And we'll do middle of preseason. And the week after the preseason's over, the season starts that Friday. We're getting ready to go.
And then we will be back every week for the duration of the season.
I am going to kind of spoil something for 2 shows from now, basically, because I'm sitting there watching the rookie game on Friday. Well, but I'm sitting here watching the rookie game on Friday and seeing Michkov play and seeing how a power play could run with him as part of it. And he's kind of quarterbacking it and things like that. And I get it. Right. And all I needed to do is watch that game and sit there and go, okay, they don't have, like, they're not playing him the next day, and I don't need them to. I need him to be around NHLers now.
He needs to play NHLers now. Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying this is because, spoiler alert for you for 2 shows from now, I don't have them making the playoffs this year. I have them probably taking a bit of a step back, honestly. But I sit there and I look and I go, you know how they do make the playoffs this year? That guy is nuts. Well, not necessarily just him. It's that guy is good enough to elevate a power play that was last in the league to maybe middle of the pack.
So,
like if whether it's just by his presence on the ice, I don't have to touch the puck, but everybody else is going to be able to do something because you're trying to focus on me, or just he's that good and skilled to do stuff. But that's the one way I see it happening. I don't love the goaltending on this team. I have questions about the defense. I'm not overly convinced that there's anybody beyond Michkov who can elevate teammates that level. Maybe Konechny can sometimes. Maybe Tippett can sometimes. But I don't really sense it. There's the reason why I think they could make the playoffs and be better. Is if it turns out to be one of those types of situations where Michkov does that much to special teams that it's almost transforms the whole thing.
Are you ready for maybe my spiciest take of the offseason?
Oh boy.
If, and I think it's possible.
Okay.
If Michkov scores 30.
Yes.
Couturier scores 30.
That's
not necessarily because I think they're going to play together.
Okay.
Although I think if Sean Couturier ends up on your power play, then, we'll see how that goes. But I think you talk about elevating game. You talk about Michkov is a magnet. He's going to get top matchups. He's going to get the other team's best defensive center. He's going to free things up for players in other lineup positions. I think if a line ends up with, for example, Michkov and Forster on it with, whoever is their center and, wherever you want to go with that, it's not going to be Konechny. Or I'm sorry, it's not going to be Couturier.
Then probably Morgan Frost.
Probably, right? So Couturier probably ends up with Konechny and Tippett.
Mm-hmm.
If that lineup spent all last year playing against top lines. Now, I know that most of the league didn't take the Flyers seriously, and it was a little, that's not when the going got tough and playoff points started getting real, they were getting your top line matchups.
Yeah.
And that happened to coincide with Sean Couturier's physical, he ran out of gas a little bit. I think we all kind of saw that.
Sure.
Another offseason, presumably relatively healthy, where he gets to get a little game strength back, combined with not necessarily having to play the tough matchup 100% of the time. If there is a Sean Couturier bounce back in the works, I think this is the year.
Okay.
And I'm hoping for it. Hoping for it.
So let me see here, because I'm not trying to process everything that you just said, but like
the core of the hot take is if Michkov scores 30, Couturier scores 30.
No. Okay, hold on a minute. I know the point that stood out to me that I wanted to agree with on you is if I was the one who made the lineup, that would be my top two lines to start with.
That'd be your top
exactly
6.
The combination that you brought up.
And for the record, probably with Couturier, Konechny, Tippett on top right now.
Right. I would do that.
Yeah.
And then probably what I would do is, now see, I think I would do something a little different when it came to the power play, though. I think that I would bump Couturier down a peg there. I would go Frost, Tippett, Konechny, Michkov, and Drysdale probably, or Drysdale or York. I could see York trying to run it.
I don't know for sure, but if you can trust Morgan Frost to win a faceoff, then I think you can put him there. If Sean Couturier is far and away your best faceoff guy, I think you have to take him.
That's fair. I understand.
Puck possession is so important on the power play.
And this is why, for me, like I'm sitting here saying, I want to see the preseason games because, and the training camp scrimmages and all that stuff like that.
I want to see what Sean Couturier looks like physically.
Well, I don't even want to. I'm not even going that far with the Couturier part of it. This is for me saying about Michkov because, because I'm sitting here saying, if he improves the power play, like I'd love to sit here and tell you on day one without having seen a single thing with the veteran guys. They'll, what was their total power play goal? Like how many power play goals did the team score a year ago?
Oh man, not many.
Right, it wasn't many, right?
7.
No, it was not that low.
More than that, but it did feel like very much more than that.
I'm wondering if I can. I wonder if I can actually find that really quick.
Probably.
Because genuinely, I actually want to bring that up for a second just to see if it. I may have to do this the fun way, which is like to dig through some stuff, but I'll get it. But my point is that like if I were to do by team, right? Okay, here we go. Team power play goals. Where's that at? Do I have to actually hit the like goal by type thing on this? I don't love the NHL's stat tracker thing. Goals for by strength. There we go. Okay. So the Flyers last year is
that a 5-on-5?
Well, no, I'm saying I can break it down by 5-on-4 or 5-on-3, which I don't even know if they maybe had one 5-on-3 power play goal. So it's not a lot, right? For context, by the way, so the Flyers were last.
By the way, they were 32nd in the league, right? They were only 12.2% on the power play.
By the way, just a hypothetical for a minute. Do you want to take a guess at who had the most 5-on-4 power play goals last year, or what the total was? Not who, just what the total was. What the total was?
112.
Way lower.
Okay, sure. I don't know.
67 was the highest. There were 4 teams in the league that broke 60. Any guesses?
Let me guess. Okay.
Best power play.
5-on-4 goals. Okay.
Right.
Oilers?
The Oilers were 4th. They had 60.
Okay. Dallas?
Dallas is not one of the 4. You're close, though. Dallas was 6th at 57.
Okay. Colorado?
Colorado was 2nd, 62.
The Rangers?
Well, hang on a minute. That actually isn't the top number. The Rangers are not in the top 4 of that group. They were 7th at 56, but they were tied for 2nd in the league with 4 5-on-3 power play goals.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So this isn't total power play goals. This was just 5-on-4.
Right. I'm going to give like one more guess here, and then I'll just have you list it off. Vegas
didn't even crack the top 10.
Really?
In 5-on-4 goals. Vegas only had 40. I'm sorry, hang on. That's not total power play goals because I forgot 4-on-3 situations too.
Of course.
Did they have? No, they didn't have any at 6-on-4 either. So they had only 50 total or 50 total power play goals last year. That was it.
Wow.
Yeah. Surprising, right? No, the number 3 team was the Carolina Hurricanes, had 61 goals at 5-on-4. Okay. And the number 1, which will come as a shock to probably will come as a shock to no one, is the Tampa Bay Lightning at 67.
Tampa. Yeah. Turns out there's some good teams in this league. Couldn't name everybody.
So here's where I was going with this. So the Flyers had one 5-on-3 goal. They had, that's an interesting number. Okay, so they had 1 5-on-3. They had 26 5-on-4, and they had 3 at 6-on-4.
Okay.
Which I know it's like a 2-man advantage, but it's still considered a power play goal by
because it's power play plus goalie out,
which adds up to and one. I'm sorry, also 1 4-on-3 goal, which adds up to a whopping 31 goals.
Ooh.
Okay, I thought it was even lower than that, honestly. So I don't want to go with like if they can double it, but
Vegas had more than double. Or I'm sorry, not Vegas. The top teams had more than double just 5-on-4.
Right. Well, I'm not trying
without any of the other. It's crazy. The Flyers special team.
But all right, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna give you a team that I'm gonna give you a team's number of 5-on-4 power play goals last year that I think should be like if Michkov elevates you to this from 26 to this number.
Okay.
You're making an impact, right?
Okay.
The number is 39.
Okay.
Ironic. I know. It is Mishkov's number. But if Michkov elevates you from 26 5-on-4 goals to 39 just by like or into the 40s even would help,
just
right?
Producing on your power play.
Sure.
Right.
But my point being with this, okay, do you know which team that is, by the way?
Who's the comparable team? Is that Toronto? Because that'd be pretty funny.
No, Toronto is one of the good ones. Toronto had 52 5-on-4, which by the way does not.
It's a little lower than their skill. Probably should be. 39.
Wow. Do you want to know an interesting stat about Toronto? By the way, while I'm just scrolling through this thing, you know Toronto had
67.
What?
No cups in 67.
Well, no, that is a fact, but that's not
okay.
what I'm looking at by scrolling through this. I knew that without having to scroll through this information. Do you know that Toronto had 11 goals at 6-on-5 last year?
Holy smokes! Wow,
like, what a number. No, so
when the extra skater jumping on is Matthews or Marner or Nylander or Tavares,
sure, of course.
I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, but you know what that means? Also, that means you were trailing in a lot of close games.
Yeah, or delayed penalties.
I didn't think about delayed penalties. Technically, yes, I guess so. But
right, that would be
the number. The number feels too high for that to be weighted by
any more than just a couple. Right.
Like I feel like that's weighted more by you were down by a goal in the third period and needed a goalie pull.
That's probably true.
Right? I will give you a hint for the team that you are looking for, by the way, because their number should increase this year too.
Their number should increase this year too. Okay, 39. Just for the meme, Montreal.
Oh, so close. Montreal's the next team above this team.
Really?
At 41. Yeah.
All right. Who is it?
The San Jose Sharks.
Okay.
And obviously my point with the hint was their number should increase because Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith.
Well, my point is
play talent there too.
If the Flyers had anywhere near a reasonable power play last year, even if they did only score as many goals as the Sharks, they probably easily make the playoffs.
Well, sure. Based on last year,
which is crazy. Well, right, we're talking about last year's stats, right?
Right. I'm saying
if they had an extra 15 5-on-4 goals, that team's making the playoffs.
What I'm agreeing with you on in that case is, like with last year, yeah, of course, based on how the rest of the games around it went.
Right.
Listen, you could also sit there and say, like, man, last year was the perfect storm of how many shorthanded goals can you score, kind of thing. Now, like, here's an interesting number for you. This is a team that actually had way more success at 5-on-3 as well, but the team that finished third lowest in 5-on-4 goals probably would have had more if something hadn't happened during the year. And it's comparable because it's going to involve a player from the same draft.
Is it whoever had other people in the Carter Hart investigation?
No.
Okay. I was going to say the league lost several.
No.
Players.
This is Chicago losing Bedard for a while, and they finished their. I'm saying that's why I said it was another player from the same draft.
Okay.
So Michkov,
I was going to say because
So, like, in other words, Bedard was probably a key I would say a key factor probably to 33 goals at 5-on-4, 1 goal at 5 or 4 at 5-on-3, 2 at 4-on-3,
Right.
another 5 at 6-on-5. Like, yeah, there's factors there, but Bedard lost some time with the injury. Right. And I can only imagine what that number might have been like. That, for all I know, that number is above. I'll give you the teams that were directly in front of Chicago really quick to lead to San Jose, Montreal territory: Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and Anaheim.
All right. Let's wind this back to training camp. I don't know how we got here, but
training camp, about what Michkov could do to affect the power play and guys on it for that matter.
Power play will be one of the major things that gets worked on in training camp, right? Like that is always, this is when you figure out who your units are.
I'm curious when
I'm
curious when we'll see that. So I want to bring up something with the training camp thing. I want to bring up the schedule really quick because
we'll do that and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, because obviously, well, first of all, by the way, this is your public service announcement with the schedule for when everybody should go and all that stuff like that, because it all starts Thursday. Now, Thursday, by the way, is everybody's favorite day of training camp if you do not participate on the ice. So it's everybody's favorite day except for the players. That is the skate day. Okay. That is the John Tortorella torture skate.
That is Herb Brooks again.
Yep. That is, and this is 3 separate groups going on the ice starting at 8:30 in the morning and finishing up before 11:30 in the morning.
Skates
just
puke,
45 minutes of pure. Can I tell you what the thing says on the schedule? Because it's got a name apparently, not like a name. Like
I saw it, but yeah,
it says did you see this 3x8 lap 300 shuffle or shuttle?
Yeah.
That sounds like a football play call.
It does. Sounds like a play action play.
3x8 lap 300 shuttle on 2.
Right.
Anyway, then the next 2 days, Friday and Saturday, and for what it's worth, I can't wait to see what happens on Saturday. Like Thursday and Friday are usually a little lighter. Saturday's your day. Saturday's fan fest type stuff and all that stuff, and everybody's going to show up to see this kid. Like
like training camp is going to be mobbed the whole time.
But right away, Friday and Saturday, you get scrimmages right out of the gate.
Right away. Yep.
Game-ish
action.
Yes, there's practices, but there's also scrimmages. So that's awesome right off the bat. And then immediately you've got those 2 game days where it's going to be who's playing in the game, who's not playing in the game, and for back-to-back days, basically. And then I am anticipating you've got Tuesday's an off day, scheduled off day, which I am fully anticipating to be a cut day. Because
the next off days are usually cut days in camp. It feels
the reason I'm also saying is because the Wednesday schedule goes from like, and you saw the schedule, so I know you know a little bit. But there's 3 teams for all of these first couple days. Then there's who's playing in the game and 2 non-game groups. So it's not 1 group, it's 2. And then all of a sudden you got to Wednesday and it's team 1 and team 2.
Yeah, your cut days are kind of baked right in. By the way, I just want to mention if you have a food truck in South Jersey, just go park it outside Voorhees for 2 weeks because you're going to make an absolute killing this year. Go park it outside the skate zone.
If you can, because there's a lot, like there's limited parking due to the construction going on.
I'm sure.
So good luck finding a spot. I mean, that would be, you know what I've seen around, like, this is actually I thought this is a brilliant idea. You know what I've seen around the sports complex sometimes after games or concerts or whatever's going on down there? Mr. Softy comes.
The guy selling whippets in the parking lot? Oh, no, different. Okay, the Mr. Softy guy. Oh, yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, and I think that's genius that the Mr. Softy truck camps out there and sets up shop as people are coming outside, and it's brilliant. Like,
absolutely.
Like you're absolutely dead on about that. So before we get out of here, is there anybody that you're interested in seeing?
Honestly, I think we've done a pretty good job talking about it. I know I mentioned earlier that we probably have a pretty good idea of 17, 18, 19 of the 20 available roster spots. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see how the back end fills out. I'm curious to see how long Jet Luchenko sticks around. I think you're right. I think he's going to get a couple of preseason games. I'd like to see how long Bonk and Barkey stick around. I was about to say I'd really like to see Oliver Bonk get an extended look this preseason. I know I mentioned it before. I'd like to see him get a taste of the NHL. Even if they don't do that, I would like to see him stick with the team for a while, take the trip to Montreal, even if he doesn't play. Like, I want him to be involved.
Right.
Because I like what I've seen out of him, and I think within the next 2 or 3 years, he's going to be on your blue line full time.
Right.
Beyond that, it's more so the players that we've already seen. Obviously, I want to see how Michkov develops through kind of a full training camp. I want to see how long Spencer Gill hangs around.
Right, and some of the names you're bringing up are going to be guys I think go earlier just because they're mostly junior.
I agree.
There's a lot of junior guys. What I'm curious about is I'm trying to figure out who the guy like I feel like last year, like there were talks about Emil Andre being like a guy who's going to linger for a while at camp, and then like it was pretty early on, and there were people like kind of speculating he's going to probably make the team, and then he did for a little bit, and then went back. Obviously, I wonder if Hunter McDonald is this year's version of Emil Andre that hangs around for longer than people think.
Okay. I think that might be a little aggressive right now, but I
just said hangs around longer than people think. I'm not saying he makes it. I'm saying
I know.
hangs around long enough. And I wonder, like, I'm trying to pick a forward in that group that I think could do that.
I think the forward group is like pretty set though. That's the tough part.
Well, Michkov's the guy obviously who's going to be the newcomer anyway.
Addition. Right.
I wonder if like a Desnoyers could hang for a while and linger.
Yeah, I think your forward core is going to look really similar to last year. Obviously, you sub out Cam Atkins and you sub in Michkov, in the actual lineup sheet.
By the way, speaking of players like not on the roster, but you went to Cam Atkinson. By the way, Danny Briere did provide a brief update on the Ryan Johansson thing that they did terminate the contract.
Yep.
Supposedly, he's under the impression it's done, and
that as far as Danny is concerned, it's over.
Because as far as everybody knows, nothing has been done yet in terms of a grievance.
There has not been a grievance filed. Right.
That means it'll be out tomorrow, right?
The 5 minutes after you hit submit or publish or whatever you hit.
Love it.
Yep. Within 5 minutes. Well, the good news for that is if we do miss anything with this show, Kevin has got us on social media. Make sure to follow him. He's at Kevin_Durso. Kevin, are you going to make it out to training camp at all, or are you just kind of going to be following along?
So actually, believe it or not, this is how bad it was earlier. I just looked back at the email with the training camp schedule and only read the first page, which took me to like the exact point in time where my kind of typical cutoff is before I'm like not making it to every single thing and kind of limited to weekends more. So I will be there on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, obviously Tuesday's an off day, and I'll be there Wednesday. Preseason's going to be underway during that time. Now I won't be in I won't be in Washington or Montreal or anything like that.
Right.
But
you'll be at the home games though, right? For the most part,
a little questionable for the first one, which I don't want to miss, but it might be something out of my control. So trying my best to iron out a plan for that so I can make it, because I'm assuming it's Michkov's first home game.
Right.
And I really would, obviously I want to be there for that. Otherwise, no, after that, I don't really have any bad, like anything that would get in the way. They do have actually, okay, so cool. We'll discuss more about that later, obviously, and stuff like that and things like that. So yeah, but for the first handful of days, I'm going to be there. So I'm going.
Okay, so you will be there. Good.
Yes, I'm going to first. I'm going starting with that crazy skate, and then where Torts gets to come up afterwards and basically laugh about it. Like, yeah, did you see what I just did? Had them all do.
See how many guys were puking?
But he'll tell us about the guy who came close to puking himself and say like that guy's awesome. I love that guy.
Well, if you are at training camp, tweet Kevin, let him know you're there. Maybe, say hi, take a picture. If not, make sure to follow him along just to get all your training camp updates. Like I said, it is at Kevin_Durso. There you go.
There you go.
Make sure you're also following the show. We're at YWT Podcast. You can find us everywhere you find your podcast, including sportstalkphilly.com, podcast, iTunes, everywhere.
Yep.
All right. The next time we talk, we will be. Will we already have preseason games?
Yeah, absolutely. Man. You said the 29th. That's going to be 4 preseason games in.
The next time we talk, we will have Philadelphia Flyers preseason games to review. My goodness, that's exciting.
Believe it or not, half the preseason's over by that point, if you can believe it.
And we will be here to talk about the first half, preview the second half, get gearing up toward the season preview. Until then, stick with us, follow us on social media. We'll see you.